Titus in Australia welcomes you all as we go to the Armour and Artillery Museum here in Cairns. The museum features over 100 different types of tanks and in total over 200 displays if you include other armor and artillery equipment such as bullets, some of the memorabilia such as awards and other pieces of history from World War I and World War II. Each tank displayed in this museum is so impressive. The details are so superb, the stories on each tank so captivating. The museum really did well in restoring these tanks and work and service them for over 2 years. Some of them actually for over 5 years. But it's impressive to see how many times how people have engineered their way to destroying each other, unfortunately. Liam then spotted these rocket launcher or rocket carrier in a truck, and I believe these are trucks from the Soviet era. And Ellie was also inspecting how big the bullets these particular British main tank had. We were allowed to touch and feel each of these tanks, and it's just so impressive to see the level of restoration on each of these tanks, and it's just a massive feat if you think of where this came from on the battlefield and having them see restored to its, I would say former glory. Tanks are filled all the way back to this museum, but let's hear out from Ellie's reaction.
This thing ran over people, Bob. So then I tested what he did.
Sad but true, but Kuya Ellie's reflection was actually correct as these tanks have been in service and most likely have killed a lot of people. But let's move on and find more of these tanks. As we move to the back of the museum, we find more and more interesting stories, such as this tank called the Toad is actually a retrofitted tank and used to clear the mines and pave the way, a safe way for the other tanks to proceed. I believe there's only about 42 of these tanks that were made, and there's only 2 on display throughout the whole world, so it's very, very rare, I would say. Now, next up is this infantry tank from Russia, which gives a glimpse on how the tank crew squeeze themselves inside and fight the wars from inside of this tank. So you can see it's not for people that are claustrophobic. It can fit around, I would say, 6 to 9 people. Carry the wounded, had an amazing story as well in this tank. And of course, from 1935 to 1955, we also had our Australian-made tanks. Next up are these American-made tanks and artilleries, which are very familiar looking because some of these are actually displayed in the Philippines, and particularly I've seen some of them in the PMA or Philippine Military Academy. Now, the biggest, not the biggest of them all by name, is this German Goliath light charge carrier. So it's probably the smallest tank ever built, but its main purpose is to carry bombs and sneak them through into the enemy territory. Now, this is my favorite display out of all in this museum. Is actually the shell or a bullet shell of the railway gun developed by the Nazi army in Germany. So this particular shell is just the bottom bullet casing of that actual bullet that's fired from this railgun. With the one that you're seeing now is a replica of that railgun. Beside it is the scale of the tank, and that tank are the ones beside us. So you could imagine how big, humongous this railgun is. Impressive displays of different kinds of bombs, bullets that we saw is actually filled in the 2 cabinets. Different types of. The only moment I've seen these are actually in computer games when I play like a Medal of Honor or any first-person shooter that had a backstory in World War I and World War II. Now, here are some of the Nazi army or Adolf Hitler's armies memorabilia. Some of them are knives that are carried by specific individuals in these armies, plus the badges and some news articles. A lot of different kind of grenades were also displayed on this rack. Again, it's just starting to see them in real life, because I thought I only can see them on computer games. Bazookas, all different types of bazookas, All different type of machine guns are in this rack. As we exit this museum after seeing these displays, I had a reflection of how gruesome it is and how uncanny people can be in terms of the methods of how we basically exterminate each other. And I do hope we learn from our past mistakes, that our countries would in civil way resolve each conflict, and that we don't see these tanks going out again and bombing each of our people. Thanks for listening and watching Times in Australia.